Hello, my name is Jeff, and this is the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser, which left the United States a few years ago, but is now back for 2024, and it's cheaper with a starting price of $60,000. So a lot of people are skeptical, asking the question, is this a real Land Cruiser? Well, let's find out. So first we have to understand what this Land Cruiser is. I mean, how were they able to introduce it just a few years later after the old one left, but for less money? I mean, it's not how inflation works, right? Usually the prices of things increase. Well, the truth is when the Land Cruiser left in 2021, it's because they were only selling around 4,000 units a year, and it was expensive at around $87,000. That's out of reach for most people. And this new one starts at $60,000, a much better price if you want to get more buyers. But how did they do that? Well, the truth is that this Land Cruiser is technically the 250 series, or the light-duty version of the Land Cruiser, known as the Land Cruiser Prado. We just never got that in the States. In fact, the 1958 and launch editions with their circular headlights for this new Land Cruiser are technically more so a nod to the styling of the Land Cruiser Prado. And then you just have these square headlights that are a bit more muscular, a bit more modest and modern looking for this new one. Now, this one's technically not the 300 series. That's the larger full-size Land Cruiser that we had that would have left and would have been the updated version. We technically get it here in the States as the LX600, a much more expensive vehicle, but here's the kicker. Both that and the GX550, also based on the same platform, all share the same Toyota next generation architecture chassis. I mean, they have the exact same wheelbase. They just share some different things, but they also have different powertrains and sometimes different differentials, but full-time four-wheel drive. Well, so far that sounds like a Land Cruiser to me. So going into the vehicle itself, this is the key, which is very much a Toyota key. We've seen this before, it's been around for a little while, but Toyota put out some extra effort and now it says Land Cruiser, which is something that I personally appreciate as a badge fiend. Now, moving on to the vehicle itself, taking a look at the front here, this sure looks like a Land Cruiser, lots of boxy good shapes, and this two-tone color you see here is even called Heritage Blue with a grayscape two-tone color on the top there. And I quite like the way that looks. In fact, these are colors that are only available on the standard Land Cruiser. The entry-level 1958 is only available with three colors, white, gray, or black, which is a little bit boring. So to me, I will expect to see a lot more of these on the road, and they're only a few $1,000s more than the standard Land Cruiser that starts at $60,000. So what do you get here when you buy this vehicle? Well, you get this wonderful utilitarian shape. The hood and doors all make wonderful noises as you open them and use them, but you also get this new tri-bar setup with LED lighting and even this DRL running lights. You also get a heritage retro-inspired grille with the Toyota badging, which looks quite sharp. We get this introduction of these rigid fog lights that are two-tone, can be white or amber, even some actual functional grills here on the side. Now, if we take a look at the lowness here, you might be wondering what's the off-road capabilities. Well, ground clearance is going to be 8 inches across the board for all of them, with a 31-degree approach angle and 22-degree departure angle. Now, those aren't the greatest figures ever produced for an off-road vehicle, but to me personally, the Land Cruiser has never really been the best off-road vehicle from the factory. In fact, it's just always been a vehicle that is great at cruising the land, on-road or off, so a bit of everything. So far, it still sounds like a Land Cruiser. There are some other cool features on it. For example, you actually have a disconnecting sway bar underneath, in addition to all of the cool off-road software that we'll talk about more so in the interior. Coming around to the side here, lots of black plastic side cladding, pretty popular on modern vehicles. We have these massive optional 20-inch wheels on here. Standard is going to be 18s with a 6-lug pattern, which is very, very cool. Massive disc brakes. Love to see that. You can fit some massive wheels and tires under here from the factory. There are some things like some of these mud guards that are actually on the front and the rear of the vehicle that I imagine most people who off-road it regularly are actually going to remove, because I think they'll just kind of get in the way. Now, talking about the suspension underneath, we have a double wishbone setup up front with coil springs and a 4-link setup in the back with coil springs and a semi-floating axle. Well, that's good stuff there, not to mention the fair amount of clearance. As we continue moving back, we have these big old square black mirrors that look like something off the FJ Cruiser with integrated turn signals. We get keyless entry, of course, wonderful features. We do get privacy glass in the back. The regular Land Cruiser comes with roof rails and the option for this $1,400 roof rack you see up here, in addition to all sorts of other accessories. And as we continue moving back, we have a locking gas cap, similar tire and wheel fitment size here in the back. And as we come to the back, we have our hatch and some of the utility features of this SUV. We do get this really fun spoiler that is, again, that two-tone color, but there's even two different ways to open up the hatch, which features LED lighting, Land Cruiser Toyota badging, and even iForce Max badging for that hybrid turbocharged powertrain with regenerative braking. First of all, we can open up the hatch by pressing this button and lifting up this tab in the back. And now you have something where you could easily leave this open while you're camping or just even to load or unload items out of your Land Cruiser. Now, importantly, if we close this back down, we could of course open the entire hatch, with now for this generation of Land Cruiser is actually a power hatch, which is a nice luxurious feature to have, of course. Plenty of room in here because it has seating for 5 that you can either load, unload, lower the back seats, etc. Pretty basic. You do actually have a 2400 watt AC 120 volt system, which is pretty nice to have in addition to just general storage space. If we take a step back, we can go ahead and drop this back down and take a look at the rest of the rear of the vehicle. Underneath, you do have a full-size spare, again, very important if you're going to be taking this vehicle off-road. And we have this very awkward bump in the back. Now this bump is actually here to hide the tow hitch. Now to me, this thing is so awkward looking, you would have been better off just having the tow hitch out in the first place. But it also brings us to the point that the Land Cruiser across the board, because same powertrain, can tow up to 6,000 max pounds. So pretty good in that regard as well with the full-time four-wheel drive. So far, this is definitely a Land Cruiser. The new Land Cruiser features a single powertrain. This is the iForce Max turbocharged 2.4-liter four-cylinder hybrid motor, producing a combined 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque, which is plenty of power for this vehicle. If you did need more, however, but like the platform, the GX550 and the LX600, the Land Cruiser siblings, technically get a bigger engine in the form of a turbocharged V6 in regular and hybrid form that gets you more power. Just expect to pay a lot more in the process. Now this engine is then paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission along with an electronically controlled 2-speed transfer case for full-time four-wheel drive with the option of four-wheel drive low as well, and even an electronically controlled center and rear locking differentials, which should be more than enough to get you out of whatever traction loss situation you're in. Now this vehicle is also very, very heavy. This thing weighs over 5,000 pounds and achieves 0 to 60 in about 7.7 seconds, which isn't slow, but also isn't fast, kind of just puts it in the middle, but I had no problems accelerating up hills. As far as fuel economy goes, however, well, it's not that great, but what do you expect from a big, heavy SUV shaped like a block? It's got an EPA rated 22 miles per gallon city, 25 miles per gallon highway, and 23 miles per gallon combined, which with the 17.9 gallon fuel tank should get you around 400 miles of range. I've been averaging more around 17 with a mixed bit of driving and even driving uphill to get up here into the mountains. And so your mileage may vary anywhere between 280 miles to 400 miles a tank, depending on what your driving looks like. But all in all, a solid powertrain here in the new full-time four-wheel drive Land Cruiser. Moving on to the interior of the Land Cruiser, if we open it up, the Land Cruiser features 2 rows of seating for a total of 5 and is offered with 2 different interior colors and 2 different interior finishes. So you can get it in either black or this brown color that Toyota calls Java, and you can also get it in Toyota's Softex, which is their synthetic resistant material, or you can get it trimmed in leather, which is what this particular vehicle has. You'll note that there is some side bolstering as well that'll hold you in, off, and on the road. We have some ventilated parts of the seats here because these are in fact heated and ventilated seats for both the front driver and passenger side. Standard is heated, but of course you can upgrade that with some other goodies. This car even has the higher premium package, which comes with a few other things like the 14-speaker JBL audio system, which is an improvement over the 10-speaker. You also get this overhead sunroof, which is another feature of the panoramic roof, and you even get a digital rear view mirror, so you don't get that standard. It's not as big of a deal in the Land Cruiser because it's only a 2-row SUV. If it were a 3-row SUV, this would be a bigger deal. So ultimately, I would say it's up to you in regards to how you want to go in that department. But before we get too far into the actual technology for the vehicle, I want to show you the back seat. So now I'm sitting in the back seat. I am about 6 foot even for reference. And as you can see here, I have plenty of headroom. You could definitely fit most adults here in the back, and even my legs don't actually touch the back of the seat with it set up for me. So that is a great great sign as far as the practicality of this. The other part is, because of the size of the vehicle, while also only being a 2-row SUV, you have plenty of storage here in the back. So you could have 5 people in this vehicle, and you could probably have 5 or close to 5 people's worth of weekend bags in the back as well. So incredibly practical vehicle. Plus, you actually get 3-zone climate control. So right here we have all the controls for that, including some USB chargers, which means that you can keep whoever's back here cool, or even if it's your dog, you can keep them cool as well. It's fairly standard. There are some vents in the sides and even some vents in the back half section of the vehicle. And you even get this little armrest here in the center, which you can fold down depending on what you want to use. So all in all, pretty impressive. The seats aren't the most comfortable, but you could definitely spend a significant amount of time back here. So moving back to the front, let's go ahead and start up our Land Cruiser, and we'll see the screens go ahead and come up to life, along with lots of beeping, which I'm gonna bring that to make a quick note. This thing beeps a lot. The driver assists in this seem to be looking further ahead, further out to the side, which could be a good thing. I personally found it just made me triple check or quadruple check things after I had checked them, and even sometimes it would mention things that weren't necessarily relevant to what I was trying to do while driving. So that could be a little bit annoying, but of course, you can turn a lot of that stuff off if you don't like it. Getting straight into the appearance, well, I like it. The retro Toyota in the center here for the steering wheel is quite nice. Everything looks quite rugged. Lots of soft touch materials. These things like the steering wheel, shifter, and seats, of course, are leather trimmed in this one. And they even have the heated steering wheel along with our heated and ventilated seats. So quite luxurious in that regard. I would have liked to see a Land Cruiser badge on the side here. Really, the only Land Cruiser badge is here in the center console. So a little bit of a gripe, but I love badges, so maybe that's particular to me. Getting into the technology, in front of the driver, we have the main speedo. Now this can be adjusted, rotated around to show whatever you want on those main screens. Of course, your fuel economy, your gauges, whatever you want, your driver assists. You also get volume controls in the steering wheel, your voice activation, more of those adaptive cruise control options, and even some of our sound system adjustments here on the side. You'll also notice this infrared system from Toyota, which is that annoying thing where it will tell you if it feels like you're distracted as a driver, even when you're not. We also get a heads-up display, super helpful to have, can show you your directions, show you what it's currently using as far as the driver assist go, your speed, and even stop sign recognition. Always helpful to have so you don't have to take your eyes off the road. Coming into the center here, we have this big touchscreen. Now I love this because this uses Toyota's current infotainment system, which in my opinion is wonderful. Is it a bit on the simple side? Yes, but I think that's part of the magic. Wireless CarPlay, Android Auto, Sirius XM, Bluetooth, and of course navigation. Because this is an off-road vehicle, that also means we get the off-road information side of things. So you can see what that screen looks like here as opposed to some of the hybrid models which have their hybrid screens. So kind of cool how simple and relatable everything is. Even if you have multiple Toyotas, you'll feel right at home with this system, which of course can be run through that 10-speaker or the premium 14-speaker JBL audio system that this one has, which is pretty good as far as sound systems go. Moving down, we have the physical buttons for our climate control, which is dual zone here in the front with that 3rd zone in the 2nd row. And of course, we have lots of physical buttons that are easy to manage and use. The ventilated seats are all right. They're not the best I've ever had, but they're pretty good. We also have heated seats. And if we hit this button, we get our camera access, which also doubles to use those cameras when you're on the trails for better visibility there. Below that, we have some exciting buttons. We have the wireless charger that would come with the premium package, in addition to the sunroof and our cooling box here in the back, which is pretty good for keeping your drinks cold. And in front here we have a bunch of different buttons. Now this first one is the drive mode button. I like to view this as essentially your daily drive mode button. So what this will do is you can adjust this, and this will have your normal drive mode, which is pretty self-explanatory, eco, which will try to minimize your throttle inputs to get better gas mileage, and then we have sport, which again, kind of self-explanatory, is there to make it feel more responsive, more lively. However, if we use this MTS button here, now that same button and dial combo will now adjust us for all of our off-road controls. And this is pretty cool because this isn't something you'll need to access on a regular basis. So to me, it makes sense to make them in 2 separate modes, whereas a lot of manufacturers just blur them all together in like a 10 drive mode select. But this makes more sense, and this will allow the computer to automatically adjust the drivetrain, the transfer case, and even those differentials to what suits the vehicle best as far as traction goes. Moving on, we have the shifter for our automatic transmission, which is a nice long selectable shifter with a manual shift mode. Not that many people will use that. Electronic parking brake, and some more fun buttons. Of course, we have this selector switch here for our four-wheel drive. This vehicle's full-time four-wheel drive, so it stays in high with the option to push it to low. We have a locking center and rear differential, that stabilizer disconnect, and our traction control button. So pretty exciting, simple stuff there. Lastly, we have some buttons here for the power hatch. We have a locking gas cap. Love to see that. AC 120 volts. My favorite button in the car is probably this right here though, the fog lights. Currently it's orange, which means the exterior lights are orange as well. But when you push this, you can change the exterior lights to white. How cool is that? So those rigid lights can be changed between two different colors depending on what you press on the buttons. And I quite like that feature. Kind of a gimmick, but I like to see it nonetheless. So a pretty simple interior. It feels kind of robust, utilitarian. Would have liked to see more Land Cruiser badges, but it's not bad. All right, accelerating in the Toyota Land Cruiser. Okay, so again, not fast, but not really slow. I never had any issues driving up here to get up to 7,000 feet from Phoenix. Was pretty easy. The vehicle was still able to accelerate even on steep inclines, which is good to know as far as future usability goes. And the vehicle doesn't even drive the way you think it does. What's surprising is from the outside, it looks tall, big, and bulky, but really, once you get behind the wheel, it feels quite nimble, easy to keep in the lanes. It's a really nice driving experience. And you combine that with this high up seating position that makes it easy to see out in front of you, the divots in the hood so you can see where the wheels are mixed with the cameras. It's a really, really nice experience. You get these narrow A-pillars that allow you to see easily out the front and the side, and you really won't have anything blocked. You get these big, massive mirrors, which should be plenty easy to use while towing, in addition to just using while off-roading with the vehicle. Everything just kind of makes sense for this vehicle. From a utilitarian perspective, just using it just makes sense. Now, moving on to the actual drivetrain itself, that full-time four-wheel drive system. Driving in a mix of dirt roads with even dirt hills, I never noticed any traction loss, and I have a feeling that's going to be the same for the majority of people. The fact of the matter is the auto system, especially with all the systems that are available in these vehicles, are getting so good these days, you really won't have to manually adjust it or manually lock the center rear differentials. The computer's going to be really good at figuring out what exactly it is you need. So I would assume 99% of people buying these vehicles won't really need a lot of those features, but if you think you might, well, it's good to have them like you get here in the Land Cruiser. I'm just thoroughly impressed with this thing. I would say the biggest downside is it can feel a little bit bumpy in bumpy city environments, but on the freeway, it's incredibly smooth. The downside of freeway driving is at the high speeds, you get a lot of wind buffeting because of its very blocky shape, which isn't the most aerodynamic, and that's a pretty common trait for vehicles like this. Otherwise, on a whole, I'm pretty impressed with this vehicle, and I have a feeling that most of the people that test drive these or own these are going to say the same thing. There you have it. That is a quick look at the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser. So going back to my earlier question, is this a real Land Cruiser? Well, I hope by now you've come to the same conclusion that I have. And the answer is yes. Even if it's not the full 300 series, the fact of the matter is this lighter duty 250 series is still a Land Cruiser. I mean, they share the same new platform with a lot of these same features. There's just maybe a little bit of a difference in terms of the pure rigidness. Like I said, there's different differentials, different powertrains if you go to the Lexus GX550 and even the Lexus LX600. The fact of the matter is, though, those are super expensive, just like the outgoing Land Cruiser that left the States in 2021. Whereas this new one, which is incredibly capable, looks awesome, and is cheaper with a starting price of $60,000, I think goes a long ways, and I expect these vehicles to be very popular. Now, of course, some of the things that have changed is the Land Cruiser used to be a little bit unique in terms of this long-running, reliable vehicle that you could take anywhere. The fact of the matter is SUVs are at an all-time high as far as popularity goes, and the Land Cruiser feels a little bit like just another SUV, and it can sort of get lost in the current marketplace. Now, in my opinion, Toyota made the right move by focusing on this very exotic, boxy styling. This, to me, is one of the most attractive SUVs currently on sale today, and that that reason alone is probably going to make more people check it out. Not to mention that full-time four-wheel drive is a big luxury, it's now more affordable, and of course that brand name has a lot of weight to it as well. The question then becomes, which one do you buy? Well, there's not a whole lot of options. The first edition is essentially a loaded version of the 1958 with all of the features. Those won't be around forever because they're the first editions. So then you have the 1958 and the Land Cruiser. That's pretty much it. There's not much in terms of trims for these vehicles. And really, to me, the 1958s are fun because of their headlights, but they're missing out on some of the more critical features. Things like that multi-terrain sensor, which to me, if you're even thinking about off-roading or even in parking lots, the multi-terrain sensors that allow you to check more stuff in your vehicle are really nice to have. You know, when you just press that button, it can check where that rock is near each tire. It's like, that's pretty helpful. So to me, plus the color options, makes it way more viable. You're only spending a couple more grand in the scheme of things for more features, so it kind of makes more sense whether you like the styling or not. But that's what I personally think about this vehicle. But with that, that's also the end of the video. If you enjoyed it and could leave me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. Consider getting subscribed for future content like this, and feel free to let me comment down below of what you think about the brand new Land Cruiser. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.